Hello, everybody, and welcome to an impromptu MerlinCast of sorts. I've actually been wanting to get this video up for at least a few days, but I'd either been too busy or too tired. It just seemed to keep getting pushed off and pushed off. I'd originally intended to last minute say, you know what, yesterday, which was a Monday, I was like, look, I'm uploading it today. I'm going to record this today. And I laid down and just passed out. So that kind of gives you some insight into how my life has been lately. Yes, I'm going to, in this little video, I'm going to give you some uh, theoretically brief reviews of some new-ish movies I've seen recently. Maybe I'll go more in depth with them. I'm not really sure. Probably not too much because they've all been out a little while now as of recording this, so I don't know really if there's too much point in going too in depth, or maybe I will. Just depends on how far I go. As you can tell, I did not plan this out very much. So really, it's just how much I can recall at this point. So, first movie is The Northman. The Northman is probably my favorite movie I've seen thus far this year. There haven't been too many, but The Northman was quite excellent. It was Robert Eggers' film. He was the director of The Witch and The Lighthouse, two films I enjoyed very much. He definitely brings his very heavy, atmospheric, dark, gritty style to this particular film, and I had a feeling it would be pretty good because he has such a sharp, distinct style, and you could tell there's a lot of attention to detail, and he's really good at just getting the best out of his sound design and working with shadows and lighting to really create an atmosphere of really putting you in a different time and place, because The Witch and The Lighthouse were both set sometime in the past and you really did feel like you were there, but also getting some really powerful performances out of the actors. And The Northman is essentially basically a hardcore Viking adventure adaptation of Hamlet, or I guess technically is sort of an adaptation of the rough tale in which Hamlet was based. It follows a character named Amleth, and really it just kind of follows his desire to avenge his father and kind of rescue his kidnapped mother from the uncle who betrayed him. And he kind of goes along becoming a warrior and becomes this berserker guy who just is really ridiculous in terms of his strength. But I'll admit I'm not an expert on Viking history, but I got the sense this movie really was very Viking, very North, so it was appropriately titled The Northman. It's just kind of really oozing with that masculinity and that bravado and just that really epic sense of battle, and you've got this really gritty, realistic foundation, which is kind of the movie seems very much similar to, if you like something like Vikings. It really tries to go for that kind of realism, but there's also this infusion of magical, supernatural elements. There's clearly a reference to Norse mythology as well. So the lines kind of get blurred a little bit in the film, but basically the movie is very, very Norse. And once again, you really feel like you're there. You feel like you're on this epic adventure. And the main character is pretty likable, actually. They don't really shy away from the fact that the Vikings were very warlike and didn't have too many redeeming qualities beyond their sense of warlike strength and code of honor, but they managed to kind of show that this character has some dynamics to him, and actually does have some care for the weaker people around him. It's slight, but it is there. I guess they kind of have to make him a little more likable than maybe the standard Viking warrior would be, without kind of sacrificing that realism. So I really appreciated that. Really, I was kind of wondering initially if Robert Eggers' style would work so well for something so epic, because the other two films were really kind of focused on a very small group of people. It wasn't really a huge scale story, and this one manages to really have these big epic ideas, and I was wondering how he'd be able to make it so epic and still have his distinct style. And he really still kind of gets close in and intimate and almost kind of suffocating at points. So there is certainly that element, because once again, most of the story, really like the climactic battle, takes place kind of on this fief, this farm, when the main character sort of infiltrates and goes undercover to the uncle's area. And really most of it does kind of take place in a small scale sense. So most of it, once again, still takes place in one location, kind of like in a little village on the outskirts, like in The Witch. So it's interesting how he told a bigger, more epic story, but still kind of doing it in a very similar, intimate setting, which kind of made the story feel, I guess, more believable and made it easier to kind of connect with the characters because we kind of felt like we were really there with them and it wasn't overly bombastic like this big, huge battle with all these kings and knights. It really felt like we were down there in the dirt and the muck, and we see that through the visuals too. And I liked how, really, once again, the performance is very strong. I remember one person I saw the movie with didn't like it very much because he said that he thought the characters weren't quite as developed, and I could understand that. Once again, this movie, like the other ones, is definitely more style over substance, but one of the stylistic elements is in the performances, the actors really breathing life into these characters. And I would say for a story like this, it's okay for the characters and their goals to be simple because through their emotions and just through the direction overall and the use of the atmosphere, the setting, the music, we really get a strong sense of what's going on. And there seems to be something dynamic, but it's really much more emotional necessarily than very dialogue heavy. Yes, maybe it would have been nice to have the characters fleshed out maybe a little more, but I thought they were pretty well dynamic. I mean, it is kind of based around Hamlet after all, so there's still some of those ideas we've seen. Like, for instance, I liked how the uncle, even though at first I thought he was going to be painted like a completely evil villain like he was suggested to be at the beginning, he kind of has more layers to him. Like, we've kind of learned that, at least in this version of the story, he kills the king, but ends up getting defeated anyway and losing everything. So it seems like he's almost a little humble because he basically just has this little farm. So yes, he is still a nobleman, but he's nowhere near living the life of glory he was attempting to. And he loses his son later on, and he feels obviously pretty impacted by that. And he also is pretty tough, and the final battle is pretty awesome as well. There's certainly a lot of gore, if you like that, which, of course, Edgar's is really good at getting good special effects for that. So there's good practical effects for the violence, if you like that. That sold the realism, too. There was some dark humor in the movie as well. There were some moments of levity, particularly with this one character who tries to kill the main character when he's a kid, and he loses a piece of his body, and then maybe that part of the story kind of gets culminated with something similar occurring as well. But there is also some levity, and there are, of course, those elements that are a bit more over the top. But it all is interwoven pretty well. I think there's some surreal elements, there's some avant-garde elements, but at the same time, you still feel like it's very gritty. I kind of almost thought it was similar to kind of what the Green Knight was trying to do, but there's somehow much more of a clear story, and we kind of feel like, at least I felt like I knew these characters better, even though it was still very, very stylized. So I think it was the Green Knight, but with more meat to it for sure. I feel like the Green Knight was a bit too light on story and characters, though I did like the style. It was a very well shot film. Anyway, The Northman I thought was excellent. I'll probably leave that with an A. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. I think it'll take a while to see something that'll really top that for me. Saw that one a little while ago. Much more recently, I finally got around to seeing Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which is a mess of a movie. A fun mess, I think, for the most part. But the key word for me is, well, all right, I'll give you two keywords. Interesting. Interesting and not over, but interesting and underwhelming, I guess. I kind of want to add in fun as well. Well, I think a couple people have pointed this out to me. My buddy Nathaniel, who I don't think has ever been on the channel before, but he mentioned that he thought, with my buddy Justin, they were discussing in the chat, I think, that this was kind of a so-so superhero movie, and kind of a good Sam Raimi horror movie. And I think I found a little meme basically saying that this was advertised as an MCU movie like it was the Trojan Horse and inside was a Sam Raimi movie. So depending on what you were looking for, you might enjoy this movie more or less. Not to get too off topic, but I will say that I feel like the MCU has kind of been in a bit of a downstream lately. Kind of a little bit of a rut. They haven't been churning out quite as many all-in-out hits that are pleasing everybody. And I mean, personally, I think that they should have given the brand a rest for at least a few years, because it feels like the whole storyline was culminating with the Thanos showdown with Endgame, and it would have been good to just kind of reset, because they have to take their time to find out what they want to do with the characters they have, and they obviously can't recast Iron Man or Captain America, really, or at least not Steve Rogers, so there's too much associated with those characters. So they're kind of leaning into some of the popular ones. They still have some, I guess, some mileage they can get out of. I think Spider-Man's been doing well. Doctor Strange is another one who, I really liked his first movie quite a bit. And that one offered some interesting ideas and a cool story about redemption and some really interesting visuals. And I think that this one kind of offers those things as well. Unfortunately, I just felt like the whole movie was missing something, and I kept comparing it to something as big as Endgame, because in Endgame we have this universal changing thing, right, with half the people being killed, disappearing, and we're trying to get them back. There's so much at stake. It's such huge stakes, at least in terms of numbers, and in these characters we really care about, because a lot of them disappeared too. Whereas with Doctor Strange, it feels like there's a multiverse, so there should be even huger stakes, but the story really never felt like it got there, because it was trying to theoretically talk about this huge culmination of things, because you've got all these different universes that may be subject to some horrible fate, but yet we don't really have as much connection what's going on, because it seems like Sam Raimi wanted to tell, once again, a more intimate, kind of like the Northman, smaller scale, personal horror story, kind of sort of like the Evil Dead movies. So once again, depending on what you're looking for, that's fine. I don't know. I talked to Dan over at Dan Reviews It, to plug his channel, and he told me a little bit about how he felt about it, that he wasn't really that into, I guess, the Sam Raimi horror movies, and I don't know how many he's really seen. And I'll admit, though, something which I don't know if anybody will really care on the channel, but something that was fairly new to me, that I've shared with some people, is that up until fairly recently, maybe a couple years ago, I wasn't really a big Sam Raimi fan. I had seen Evil Dead, I think, several times, kind of in a vacuum. And other than that, I was only really familiar, I think, mostly with the Spider-Man movies, the Tobey Maguire ones, which I mostly enjoyed growing up, and then I kind of had mixed feelings about as I got older. But I watched Evil Dead 2 pretty much by itself, and I didn't appreciate it very much at the time. I thought it was goofy. I didn't quite get it. Now, having seen the original Evil Dead, and then a while before that, even seeing I think it was the sort of remake they had done back in 2013 or something, I kind of got more of an appreciation for him, and learning more about Sam Raimi, and just honestly, in the last few years, kind of looking more into the behind-the-scenes aspects of filmmaking, learning about these different directors, and sort of the bootstraps, independent filmmaking, and kind of being inspired to try and eventually do more of those projects myself. It's made me really appreciate the actual technicals of filmmaking, and the struggles that a lot of these young directors went through, and how innovative they were. And with that greater understanding, and I think more of an appreciation for horror movies too than maybe I had 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I really grew to appreciate just all the cool little tricks that he used. And so I think, once again, for his particular, very unique brand of over-the-top horror, I think that, which definitely leans a little more into camp, I think that this movie was actually pretty fun in a lot of spots. And I think Dan said that he didn't really like that very much. And here's the thing. I actually like it when a movie commits to what it wants to be and goes in with the tone. I think one of the big problems that I've noticed, and it seems to come up in a lot of discussions and reviews of movies, is a tonal issue. When the movie wants to be too many different things, and maybe some movies can, and they find that right balance, but there's kind of a tonal connectivity. So even if we switch between a dramatic moment or a comedic moment or a more introspective moment or whatever, it still feels kind of like the same movie. A lot of times you feel like you're watching films that are being a bunch of different things, and it's a bit disjointed. Some movies maybe can do this well, but I think a lot struggle with it. I like it when a film says, okay, look, we're going to commit more to this idea. On one hand, I think that this movie suffers from trying to do the horror movie thing, which seems a bit more low stakes, which doesn't really fit with the big epic MCU superhero movie. So they're kind of at odds with that, which almost sort of sabotages how epic it seems like it's supposed to be. But I kind of wish that it would have just committed to being a grittier horror movie. Maybe it shouldn't have been a multiverse movie, but all the stuff with Scarlet Witch and a lot of the interesting visuals and the monsters and a lot of the doppelgangers, like the evil Doctor Strange and the different universes they go to and the darker elements of it. Like, I enjoyed those things. I wanted more of those things. And I think the problem is, though, it's like by trying to commit, okay, like the center, they have this girl. I think they have this girl who's basically just a plot point, who I think, no offense to her, she's probably one of the weakest aspects of the movie. I don't know if it's that she's not a very seasoned actress. I'm not very familiar with her, or she was just kind of underwritten. Like, I feel like the beats were there, but I didn't feel like we really connected. I didn't really connect that much with her character, and I cared more about Doctor Strange, though I felt like his whole idea of kind of feeling regret about certain paths he didn't take and choices he didn't make. Honestly, I didn't completely fully buy that. I mean, I did, but it didn't seem like it should have been the crux of the movie necessarily. Like, there should have been more to it than that. It didn't really hold the movie as well together for me as I think it should have. So, I don't know. It seemed like some of those dramatic elements were underwritten. Like, it was all there, and you've got Wanda's whole... You've got Wanda's whole desire to basically get the book so she can go into another universe and then just basically live a life with her kids. And to be fair, some people actually, some of my students actually asked me about whether or not Doctor Strange would be defeated by Scarlet Witch. And I brought up House of M, which I don't know if any of them read before, but in the comics, she had changed reality, completely changed all reality and everybody's lives in it to better suit her particular desires. Okay, and that happened in the comics, and that was just like almost when she had like a meltdown. She didn't even really intentionally want to do that. So, yeah, I think that Doctor Strange is very powerful, but Scarlet Witch is really up there. So I do think it's definitely something she could do. And people can refresh my memory, but from WandaVision, I was pretty sure that by the end of the series, I thought that she had kind of gotten through that. Like, she had almost made amends with the fact that she didn't have her kids. I mean, I could be wrong. It's been a while since I watched it, but I thought it was a bit strange that they turned her into a villain again. I thought that she had sort of overcame that, but maybe I'm wrong. Points to whoever actually edited together the trailers, because I had no idea Scarlet Witch was the villain. I had no idea. And I guess in retrospect it was obvious, but no, I think she made a very good villain. She was probably one of the best things about the movie. She was very enjoyable. Once again, I thought her idea was a good motivation. And I guess it is kind of similar to Strange's because it's both based around regret and things they wish they would have done differently. Like I said, the themes are there. They just feel underwritten. Maybe if we had taken more time to amp up those horror elements. Like, I love when Scarlet Witch is, chasing after them and they're going through the tunnels and the water's coming through and she's got the blood over her face. That just, they got the close in, zoom ins, and she's hobbling along like she's undead or something. Like, right out of a classic horror movie. And there were some effective scares and creepy moments. Definitely. And there were some silly moments too, like you've got Doctor Strange having to kind of possess the undead version of his other self to go in and fight the Scarlet Witch in the other universe. I mean, there's some fun ideas there. Like I said, there's a lot of fun ideas and there's fun moments, but it just feels like it's a bit disjointed and the drama of it's underwritten, and it never feels quite as epic as I feel like it should. And I think that might be because those more claustrophobic and heavily atmospheric horror sections just seem better suited to a smaller scale story. And I think a lot of them work well, but I don't typically think of horror on, I guess, that big of a scale, and maybe it typically isn't. Maybe that goes against what we typically think of as horror, and maybe that's why horror is when it's most effective because it seems so intimate and therefore more uncomfortable. I don't know, but just kind of a point there that might be something to think about. Yeah, so I think that was a bit disjointed, but I will say though, my favorite part of the movie was actually when they get stuck in a particular universe and they drop in some cameos. And I feel like that this really wouldn't mean that much to somebody who's not familiar with some of the older comics. At least some of the comics that were, coming out and the storylines that were coming out when I was, in my teens or whatever, which I think at this point was, I don't know, 15 years ago or so. And I really appreciated that. And it definitely could certainly foreshadow things that the MCU wants to do. And that made me happy because I think they should go towards these properties. So, spoilers, they get stuck in a universe where there's the Illuminati, which is a group of superheroes who basically took control and sort of have authority. And obviously it might not be exactly the same as the version that I read about. These are the people that launched Hulk into space, which preceded the Planet Hulk storyline. But we get some cameos there, and we get we get some people. We get Jack Ryan. We're from let's see, yeah. And we get the guy from The Office as Fantastic Four, as Mr. Fantastic, which I thought was awesome. I was about to say awful, but no, I thought that was awesome. And it was one of those things too, because I had thought for a long time, like, wait a minute, who could they cast as Mr. Fantastic? And I couldn't really picture anybody, because I don't know, they'd have to be kind of like roughly the right age, and I was like, what actor would be charismatic enough to pull that off? And no, he popped up, and I thought to myself, like, oh, you know what? That actually is good casting. He looks the part. He's likable enough. He seems like he's kind of the right age to do it with the silver-haired fox, sort of thing that they're going for. Let me see. I'm trying to... Oh, the characters I'm looking for. I'm drawing a blank for some reason. He's Jeff from The Office. John Krasinski. John Krasinski. There he is. I knew I knew the name. But yeah, John Krasinski was Mr. Fantastic. They had Agent Carter come in as the Captain America stand-in. They had a new Captain Marvel, who I think was the other. I think she was a character we'd seen before in the MCU. And they had Black Bolt show up, and Black Bolt was awesome with his tuning fork, and how awesome he was and ridiculous he was. I'm like, yeah, Black Bolt, that's so great. And even with a little bit of the classic reworked X-Men the Animated Series theme, and with his classic frickin' Shi'ar futuristic hover chair, they got Patrick Stewart as Professor X, and I was like, you know what? Hit me right in the nostalgia, right in my geeky little heart. And I was like, you know what? That's freaking awesome. And the part, and it's not just a stupid cameo with these characters. They are involved in the plot, and they actually talk to Strange, and they reason with them, and they try to they try to stop him, and they imprison him because they think he's a danger. And you got Ultron robots, and Mordo's there, but they get to actually battle against the Scarlet Witch, and Professor X even has a hand in it, and so does Mr. Fantastic and Captain Marvel and everybody. And it was cool. It was satisfactory that they had that little section of the story, and it wasn't just regulated to cameos simply. It added a bit to the story. I really appreciated that. I thought that part was awesome. Like, purely from a fan perspective of the old comics, I thought that was done pretty well. I actually wanted more of that, and I think that maybe jumping to different universes and seeing different other versions and having to maybe look at things from different perspectives and find different ways to maybe fight against Wanda in different universes, and looking more into the time travel, science fiction, philosophical elements of it, or the supernatural elements of it, that might have tied into the dramatic elements of the story, dealing with regret and lost choices, and it might have been more epic. So I think that might have tied in. I don't know if that necessarily would have worked with the horror tone, but more stuff like that would have been good too. So it's like going more for the horror, or going more for the big epic sci-fi multi-universe stuff. I'm not sure if they could have worked as well together coherently. But I don't know. I think going one way or the other would have been fine. I liked a lot of the scenes. I liked a lot of the ideas. And I think that the story at its basic element is okay. And there's still good performances. Like, there's a lot of good stuff in there, but I just kept watching it thinking, this is a lot more underwhelming than I think it should be, just compared to a lot of the other Marvel movies I've seen. But it is one of the most unique ones I've ever seen. And they tried something different. And there were some cool things there. So I'll give them that. So I'll probably leave this one with a B minus. See, I thought this would be brief. I was wrong. I'm going to take a drink of the soda. Okay. Refreshing. Okay, so finally, last movie I saw most recently was the one that's been out the longest, was Sonic 2. And Sonic 2, simply put, was amazing. I'm surprised. I didn't hear people really talk about this one at all. And I liked the first movie. I thought the first movie was good. It was quite a surprise. There was the backlash over the design of Sonic people really didn't like. And then, they redesigned them. And I thought, okay, well, that's cool. It's cool that the animators cared enough and the studios cared enough to listen to the fans and to listen to the feedback. And so, visually, Sonic looked better as a character. But was the story going to be good? And, it was pretty good. I think it was one of the better video game related films that we've had so far. But that being said, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great. So I wondered, would Sonic 2, because the first movie really seemed like it was kind of almost hinting and teasing at a lot more Sonic stuff. I was thinking, okay, well, they have to elevate it, right? Up the ante. What could they do? And this movie was a complete surprise to me. And I know that I said The Northman's probably my favorite movie to come out this year, but no lie, I think Sonic might be in the running for it. Sonic 2 might be in the running. Seriously. And maybe that's because I went in with, I don't want to say low expectations, but I went in with no expectations. I had heard it was good, but I didn't hear anything specific from that, and I didn't hear anything necessarily glowing. I didn't hear much about it at all, really. But I was blown away. I thought this movie was really, really good. And I honestly, maybe, I'm not the most diehard Sonic fan, but I almost want to say it's better than I would think any Sonic movie almost deserves to be. Which I know that sounds mean, because I do like Sonic, and I know there's, a lot of different storylines. There's other, video games that have bigger stories, and there's comics and other things. I know this. So, don't make it seem like I'm kind of putting down the Sonic fandom. But it's kind of like the Ninja Turtles movie, way back in the day. Like, Ninja Turtles was fun, it was good, it's got its positive qualities, but that first live action film was so good, you're almost thinking, like, this is almost too good. Like, because Ninja Turtles is so silly. I kind of feel like Sonic 2 is kind of like the Ninja Turtles movie. It's a little more lighthearted, I think, but it's just like it's one of those films that is just a complete love letter to the characters, to the franchise, to the fans. And I'm kind of an amateur Sonic fan, but I could feel the love for it, especially for those original games, with the Chaos Emerald. You've got the all the jewels there, and you've got obviously the integration of Knuckles the Echidna and Tails. But they had the balance with the human characters as well. And okay, just as an example, when Sonic is sitting there with James Marsden on the boat, and this is kind of like a coming of age story about responsibility, and almost like the next step in the superhero story of a kid growing up. And Sonic really is just an insert for a kid, a young person growing up, learning about responsibility and what it means, to be a hero, But James Marsden's sitting there, kind of giving him the pep talk. He's like, my father did me. And it's just that wholesome family element. It seems it's so genuine. It could be cheesy, it could be silly, but it's not, because it's done so genuinely and with such care. And like everything in this movie, like the creativity and the love and the energy, the visuals, the action scenes, but those heartfelt moments as well. And there's kind of like that overview, just a little bit of sort of a general aspect of the common Sonic mythology. There's the other worlds, and a little bit about perhaps suggestion about Sonic's particular power, and just there's a lot of little Easter eggs, and is it quite as fleshed out as it could be? But maybe not. But considering they're trying to reach out to a wider audience as well, if you didn't know about some of the aspects of the Sonic mythology, you've got a good introduction, I think, and I'd be curious to learn more. Like, oh, and like just as an example of how it really made me feel, like as I was watching it before it was even done, I was like, I want to go back and play some of those old Sonic games again. Because I liked Sonic growing up. I enjoyed it. I always really enjoyed those games. I wasn't really an expert at them, but I played them a fair amount growing up, and I always had a fondness for the character. And I remember, man, I think I played that one educational computer game for Sonic, and I read some of the comics, and I even read like a novelization of the Saturday morning cartoon, which I watched some of the original Saturday morning cartoons, the really silly one and the more serious one from the early 90s. So yeah, it's been a while, but on a basic level, I'm familiar and have enough love for the Sonic character in a very basic way. I know there's people that have probably gotten into much more of it than I have. I know the anime hero is a big Sonic fan, probably much more than I am. But just kind of satisfying like the base amateur Sonic fan, it made me really happy. Like, and I mean that genuinely, like just as a movie, like it just made me feel so good. And it wasn't like a simple turn your brain off kind of thing. I was really invested in the story. Like I was curious about what was going to happen next, and there was a little bit of a mystery and there was some tension. I was really, really invested. So I don't know. I really loved this movie. I thought that there was a really great balance, like Knuckles the Echidna. I think Idris Elba voiced him. He was really great because he does almost the war for Drax kind of alien thing where he's kind of really out of touch and he's like pure warrior. And that's kind of his whole thing. Sort of dominates his whole personality. He's intimidating, but it's also kind of funny because he's got almost this one-track minded innocence to him, which kind of leads to his downfall. But maybe it's kind of funny, and just the growth he has and the bond he kind of forms with Sonic after they start out as enemies seems really genuine. Like it's just amazing how it's overtly seems simple, but once again the writing is sharp and it's simple, but it's tight and it's well done, it's effective, and the actors do a really good job of selling it. And I like how Sonic is actually becoming more the Sonic we know, because he's a bit naive, but he's still kind of getting a little cockier, a little more full of himself, like I think Sonic typically is. But he's still got that heartfelt innocence to him too, and he's got that strong likability. But Tails, okay, look, Tails was perfect. Tails was pitch perfect. Like when the character came up, I thought, wow, like just like in terms of design, but his voice, the way his character is just so innocent and kind of awkward. He's like this great sidekick for Sonic. Oh my goodness, it's just he's so adorable. He's so likable, but he's smart, and oh man, like it's just his bond with Sonic is just pitch perfect, just the way I remember it. Like it's like they plucked him right out of the games, right out of the cartoons. I'm like, yes, that is Tails. Like maybe it's not. I mean, I don't know if he's done quite to the same level. Like for instance, I feel like Sonic is still almost forming into the Sonic we know, which is fine because it's an origin. But Tails is just Tails, which in some ways I think almost is like they got Tails perfect. And I don't know if I really like Sonic too as a character, but I think by making it still building an origin, it sacrifices what we typically think of Sonic, but in a way that makes him really likable too. I don't know. But Tails was really great, and I loved like the little Easter eggs, the visuals, like when they're escaping the mountain, and like he's like, you go high, I go low, and of course, because Tails flies along, like if you're doing the dual player, like and then back in the Sega Genesis days, like oh, that's cool. Also, the fact that the movie, it's funny with Doctor Strange, I talked about how sometimes a movie tries to do a bunch of different things and it's frenetic and it doesn't work well. This is kind of like the opposite, where totally it still feels integrated like it's the same movie, but there's all these really wacky things that happen, like to keep it a consistent pace, but you don't really feel like any of it really doesn't fit. Like when they go into this it's like a Russian a pub essentially, and they go in their little disguises, and they end up getting in a little kind of a questionable situation, and they have, Tails has to look up in his little computer like, oh, like culturally, how could we, like form the right custom to perform the right ceremony to get out of this, because they're about to be murdered by these Russian banditos like it's 1890 or something. Like, what is happening? But then they get off, they get out of it through like this ridiculous dance off. But it's awesome. Like, I thought it was great. It was fun, and it just seemed like just wonderful, heartwarming stuff. And we haven't even mentioned, Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is just a top of his game. Like Dr. Robotnik is gonna go down, I think, as one of Jim Carrey's best roles. Like, he's just absolutely amazing, because he's that perfect sense of that looming threat, but he's still so quirky and fun. He's that great mad scientist, and he's got that perfect Jim Carrey energy. Even at the beginning, just his humor is really great. It's perfect. It's pitch perfect, wacky Jim Carrey, but it's so smart and it's so him. Like, I just love how he's committed to this, and like pretty much everything I've seen him in, he gives it 110%. Fully becomes this other person, and he's pouring love into it. I don't know if he knows much about Sonic or not, but I believe he was just fully committed. Just Jim Carrey is wonderful, and I mean the battle with the giant Dr. Robotnik mecha at the end when he gets the full power, and then we get the transformation, which a lot of Sonic fans will be happy to see. So, there's just a lot of really, really good stuff with Sonic 2. I thought it was an amazing movie. I kind of, I couldn't really think of many bad things about it. I think it might actually hold the same rank, like as an A with the Northman to me. Because in some ways, I feel like the Northman was like a very well constructed film. But Sonic 2 was also a very well constructed film, just in a completely opposite direction, and no other movie this year has made me feel as happy. I've been very tired lately, had a lot of long days, made myself see it, and I absolutely loved it, especially after seeing Doctor Strange before, like a couple days before, and feeling kind of underwhelmed, or like the day before or something, and then seeing that and just having my expectations completely subverted and just blown out of the water. Absolutely loved Sonic 2. So, yeah, if people didn't see that one for some reason, especially if you're a Sonic fan, and honestly, if you're not, I feel like the nice thing about it is, too, it would help if you had seen the first one, but I don't think you necessarily need to. I think it holds its own very well as its own movie. I think Sonic 2 is quite excellent. And believe me, I'm surprised that I'm saying it, but I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. Yeah. So, yes, you got a triple movie review. And remember how at the beginning of this, I said that it was going to be quick? No, probably should be. But yeah, quick update. Yeah, I've just been working a lot. It's been a bit tired lately. I've either been falling asleep or been doing other things, or just haven't really been able to get into the mindset to do these recordings. So it's a 3-in-1. I missed another week of doing the podcast, so I think this Friday I'm going to double or maybe triple up with the Fullmetal Alchemist podcast if you're listening for those. Also, my second book, sort of my short story collection, Monsters in the Dark, is available on Amazon, Kindle, or paperback. I'll probably do another video or two to promote that. And lately, I've just been trying to catch up on old shows. I've been watching some Curb Your Enthusiasm and some Seinfeld, oddly enough. And that's mostly been it. I've also been reading through Jurassic Park slowly. I really like the movie, and I really like the book too. It's quite excellent. I've tried to read it before and never quite got through it, but sitting through it now, it's actually been really good. So that's what I've been up to lately. Yeah, so I appreciate you people watching or listening to this. Please let me know your thoughts on these movies. If you saw any of them, if you liked anything or disliked anything about them, please share. It has been pretty busy, and I don't want to make any exact promises, but I do know that most likely in a couple weeks my schedule should be filling up with summer. So I have a couple things I specifically want to get out of the way backlogged that need to get done. I know some people wanted those Joe Loves Movies retrospectives to come back, and probably more podcasts. So we'll see. And of course, any suggestions for videos, let me know. But I'm going to try to get some things out of the way coming summer. But in the meantime, I'll upload something within the next week or two, and I will talk to you all later. All right, everybody, thanks for the continued support, and remember, stay magical.